Hello friends, and welcome back to the Jazz Ranch. I'm glad you joined me. I'm wearing my hat now tonight that I bought in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico a couple years ago. And these cats were walking up and down the beach with these hats stacked up on top of their heads. They were stacked up, 20 of them or 30 of them at a time. It was amazing. I should have tipped them on that alone. Anyway, I want to start a new trend where I'm going to give you a special quote. A quote of the evening. In other words, these are famous quotes by famous musicians, and some of them are pretty interesting and some of them are pretty funny. Anyway, this particular one I'm going to start out with is by Thomas Beecham, who was the conductor of the London Philharmonic. And he made a quote based on playing in an orchestra. If you play in a band, he said, there are two golden rules. Number one, you must always start together. Number two, you must always end together. The public doesn't give a damn about anything you play in between. I love that. I think there's an element of truth to that, and it's also funny. So anyway, I'm going to be playing a song for you now that's called Fly Me to the Moon. I'm going to be playing it with a special technique called the drop 2 technique. If you haven't seen this, I did a previous video on it. I also did a video on Fly Me to the Moon using the locked hands technique, but I had a request to do it using the drop 2 technique, and this one I do have on my website as a download, so you can download the score and study it. So now here we go with Bart Howard's Fly Me to the Moon. I want to talk about what I played, which was a drop 2 voicings technique built on the song Fly Me to the Moon. And this particular song works well with the drop 2 because it's very stepwise in terms of its melody. It goes right down the scale. We're in the key of C or A minor, you could call it. And it goes right down the scale of C or A minor, like that. And then here's the first accidental there. Right, so now the drop 2 works very well with linear or like with stepwise move, like that. It's a drop 2 sound. It's a way of harmonizing where you're taking the second note out of the chord, the second note from the top, and putting it down here. So that's the sound of it. So now I use 3 techniques that I talk about. The first one is the chordal technique, the block chord in the left hand. So in this case it would be like, say we played this like, that, or even like this. It just shows you how it works. Now, that's the first technique you want to learn, is the block chord technique. But you can see that each measure has one chord in it. A minor, D minor, G7, C major. Second technique would be to take that now and put it into the right hand. So if I did it with one chord, I mean, you can't. It'd be like that. But if you did it, if you harmonized it, you can harmonize it like that with the scale, but also you can harmonize it using diminished chords. Now, why diminished chords? Because the notes in between this note, that note there, does not fit the chord. It fits the scale, but it is a passing tone. It's passing tone. So, chord tone, passing tone, chord tone. That's a chord tone. Passing tone. That's a chord tone now. Passing tone. In other words, it alternates a lot of times between chord tones and passing tones. So now, what I'm doing is I'm harmonizing it by using diminished chords for the passing tones, because they sound better, they're more sophisticated, it's more intelligent. They're the chords to use when you're passing, are the diminished chords, because they're tension chords, and they sound really good, and they create more tension to pull to the next chord. Now the third step would be the third technique I would teach would be the spread voicing. Now that is where you spread out the harmonies. We have the root down here and you have the melody here, spread out over 2 or 3 octaves, and then you fill in the harmony in between. It's usually one chord per measure, like maybe a passing chord there, maybe a passing chord there. That. So that's your fullest sound. You get the nice upper extensions. 9ths, 11ths, 13ths can all happen within the spread voicing. However, let's look at that second version where I'm now voicing the chord in such a manner that the melody's on top and the harmonies are below, and I'm putting those diminished chords in there. Those are the chords you want to look at and examine and figure out in order to play the drop 2 technique, or even the locked hands technique. The locked hands would be this. Let's see, let's get it. Like that, and then the drop 2 is what I played. It's going to be this. It's perhaps the most sophisticated sound. Let's talk about how we convert this chordal technique, right hand chordal technique, now to a drop 2. I also wanted to mention that the drop 2 technique of voicing has been used for many years, not just by jazz musicians, but also by composers, arrangers, Tin Pan Alley composers. You'll see it in old sheet music and so on. It's a great way of harmonizing a melody. And the way it works is by taking the chord voiced below the melody note, filling in the harmonies, and then using diminished chord approaches like that. So I have, now these chords here are basically 6th voicings, meaning that this interval here on the outside is a 6th. Now, it's really a minor 6. If it were a major 6, it'd be that. But this is like a minor 6 or a sharp 5. Now, this is a diminished chord. This next one is another 6th chord. This particular one is a major 6, or you can look at it as a minor 7th if you invert it. But anyway, the voicing has a 6th in it, you see, from the bottom note to the top. Then we go to another diminished chord, and then here's another 6th chord. So now in the locked hands position, you're doubling the melody, and it sounds like this. But in the drop 2 voicing, it sounds like this. They're both really nice sounding, and they both harmonize the melody with every melody note being harmonized, rather than spread voicing or other techniques where you just hear part of it harmonized. Now you're hearing every note harmonized. Now there's that altering between the sixth chord and the diminished. That's kind of the key to the sound. But also the fact that now we're taking, the drop two means we're taking that voicing, 4-note voicing, and we're turning it into a 3-note voicing by eliminating or dropping the second note from the top down an octave and putting it into the left hand. So the sound goes from this sound to this sound. So now this sound to now the drop two sound is this. It's about as pretty a sound as you can get out of a melody, really. And that's why it has become, and it is always popular. And often you'll see it in little segments. You won't see it throughout a whole melody like that, or a melodic line. You won't see that so much. In fact, usually if I use it, I use it sparingly, and so does Bill Evans, and so do the other players that use it. Barry Harris and so on. Use it sparingly. But I did this particular arrangement just to show you how it works in great detail, to have it continue through a song. But most players mix it up with a variety of other techniques, which you'll learn. If you study all my videos, you'll see all the techniques that I use and how I use them sparingly and put them all together in a mix like a salad. So now we'll continue and we'll wrap things up. Hopefully you have the score of this so you can look at it and you can read music and so on, and you're good at that. Some people just want to learn from the visual here. But I wanted to point out on the chart, measure 9, where I did something like the melody goes, let's see, take it from. That's the melody, but I put a little fill in there, like I put like an embellishment of the melody. Now, when I did the embellishment, I also had to voice it, right? So I voiced it like this. So I used the drop 2 in there with that. And then I put that's the voicing I use. Then I put a fill like this. Of course, those aren't drop 2, but they're fills. And then I put another embellishment here. Or there, maybe that's the diminished chord there. Yeah, so that's it. Now that's, if you want to learn more about drop 2, look at my previous videos. One of my earliest one was on But Not For Me, had to do with the drop 2, and I had all the music written out so you could look at how the drop 2 is formed in greater detail. But I wanted to do this song for you. It was a request. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll see me now in the wrap-up. Here we go. Wrapping up here from the Jazz Ranch in this particular episode, I wanted to mention that my piano tuner was here this week, and he asked about my book. And I usually don't like to plug my book, but I gave him my book, and he wrote me a note. He's saying, "This book is fantastic." And then I heard from a subscriber who bought my book, who said that he has tons of books, and my book is the best one he has. And so I guess I was flattered, and my answer, I remembered this statement that said, "Modesty is for those who have no talent." I love that. Anyway, I'm going to sign off with you now by saying, always play a great ending, and you will get a great applause. But also, play some good notes in between. Okay, we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.